Hello and welcome to the HHH Racing Podcast. This is your host, Howard Kravitz. Thank you so much for joining me today. We've got a fantastic show lined up for you tonight with a very special guest that I've been waiting to have for quite a long time. A lot of things that we need to do tonight. First, before we begin, a lot of ways for you to get in touch with me. First of all, right there, right side of the screen, please hit that subscribe button. Hit that subscribe button, and after you do that, hit that notification bell so that you will know when new content comes up on my show. Also, as you can see on the scroll below there, you can also follow me on Twitter at HKravitz. I believe I'm an excellent follow. I have a lot of great horse racing information and tidbits and retweets and a lot of other great information on my Twitter handle. And also, you can email me at hkravitzhorse@gmail.com. Again, hkravitzhorse@gmail.com. Now, there are two very important promotional items that we need to talk about. First of all, if you go to inthemoneypodcast.com, and some of you already know this, I'm a blog writer for inthemoneypodcast.com, and I do daily analysis and selections for Canterbury Park in Shakopee, Minnesota. You can find my free daily analysis Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays at inthemoneypodcast.com. Please check it out for great information. I had an excellent first week, hitting over 30% with my top picks, including undefeated, fading my bad favorites. I was 6 for 6 last week, fading bad favorites on the inthemoneypodcast.com Canterbury blog. You don't want to miss it. It's a great track. They have an industry low 10% takeout in their pick fives and pick sixes. It's really, they have big fields. It's really a great place for your betting dollar to go, especially during the week. And they race at night. It's 5 o'clock Central Standard Time is when they start. So you can get that action during the week at night. So please make sure you do that. Also, and I just want to get it up here. Actually, I don't have it up on the screen. Hold on, I think I do. Apologize. So actually, you see it on the bottom of the screen right now. Let me take this down. Very exciting news next week. Everyone ready? Holding on to your hats? Next week, it is, of course, Belmont Stakes Week, and I have one of the best national handicappers in the country. He's worn many hats. He's done morning lines. He's won contests. He's worked for Naira. I have the one and only Nick Tamaro on the show, and it's going to be next Wednesday. So everyone mark your calendars down. I will be sending out many tweets about it and reminders. But again, my live show will not be on Thursday next week. It will be next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Nick Tamaro from In the Money podcast and a lot of other places. He is, again, one of the best handicappers in the country. We're going to be handicapping together the Belmont Stakes Day card, especially the late pick five and the Belmont Stakes. And let me tell you something, folks. The Belmont card is always one of the best cards of the year. I basically think it's Breeders' Cup 2.0. I mean, if you look at the pre-entries right now, I'm sure it's going to be huge fields, and there are going to be some unbelievable matchups all day at Ballon Park a week from Saturday. Again, please mark your calendar. Nick Tamaro will be live right here on the HHH Racing Podcast, and that will be next Wednesday. Again, next Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, myself and Nick Tamaro handicapping Belmont Stakes Day a week from Saturday. It's going to be outstanding. Last thing before I bring on my guest, the HHH Racing Podcast Race Day blog, which many of you receive. I have a huge list of people that receive my Race Day blog on Saturday mornings. It's been excellent. I've had a lot of really good opinions on there with some price shots. I give a lot of information, not only about the featured races that we talk about, but also undercard races and other sequences from other tracks, is going to be going a major change next week in the race day blog. If you're already signed up, you'll hear about it early next week. If you've not signed up for the Triple H Racing Podcast Race Day blog, please make sure that you email me at hkravitzhorse@gmail.com. Tell me that you'd like to be on the mailing list for the Race Day blog that comes through email right to your directly to your email on Saturday mornings. Please email me at my Gmail address, and we'll give you information about the Triple H Racing Podcast Race Day blog, which is going to undergo some big changes next week. If you're listening live right now, you hear about it through email. If you are listening live, and we already have many, many viewers, as our guest is very popular, Twitter has been on fire waiting for our guest to come up, and he's going to be up here any second now. If you're watching live, please make sure you comment on the right side of the screen. We already have people commenting. Monty, I hear you. Monty, we're going to get you some winners this weekend. I know our guests can hear me. No pressure. We already got winners out there. Joe is here tonight. Joe, thank you very much. I'm so happy that you're here and you can listen to us live. Again, if you are live right now and you want a chance to be part of the show, please make sure you comment there on the right side of the screen. We want to have a very lively conversation tonight. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is time. Let me go ahead and take that comment off there from Joe. It is time to bring in our guest. I'm very excited to have this guest. He also wears many hats. He is a turf writer for thisisracing.com. He's also been involved in PR in the horse racing world. He's done many things. I'm very excited to have our guest tonight, the one and only Paul Halloran, here tonight. Paul, how you doing, sir?
Hello, Howard. How are you?
I'm doing terrific. Thank you. Thanks for joining the show tonight. Very happy to have you on. We're going to be talking about many things, Paul, but for those people who do not know you, I'm sure a lot of people on the East Coast know you, but maybe not throughout the country. If you could just please tell us a little bit about your background in journalism and in horse racing.
Well, Howard, I started at a daily newspaper right out of college in 1985, long time ago. I came home from my college graduation and my parents said, well, where are you going to work Monday? I said, I don't know. And they said, well, you better figure it out. So I was fortunate to hook up with a daily newspaper as a part-time sports writer and went from there to full-time to sports editor when I was 25 years old. Did that for 10 years and then news editor. I've been in the PR world for 20 years, but since I started covering dog racing, old greyhound racing back in 1985, I've been covering racing in one way, shape, or form since then, and of course, been doing horse racing now for over 20 years.
Great. I mean, it's such a great sport to cover. I'm sure you have stories that people would not believe. We're going to touch on some of those stories. I find it very apropos, Paul, that you're wearing that hat because you have no idea what questions I was going to ask you tonight. But here's question number 2. And by the way, Paul, just so you know, the questions will also come up on the bottom of the screen that we're going to talk about. Here's question number 2. How about that? You must have read my mind. Can you please talk about your hat a little bit and your connection to the outstanding horse, Catholic Boy?
Yeah, I'll try to condense it because it really is a long story. But the story is I was going to the Breeders' Cup the year that Catholic Boy was in the juvenile, which was 2018, I believe. And unfortunately, my dad was sick and he was in the hospital. And it was the year it was at Del Mar. And we were really torn, should we go or not? And I went to see him and kind of hinted that I might not be going. He said, what are you, crazy? Of course you should go. So long story short, I did go. The second to last thing he said to me was, take $100 of my money and bet a horse for me. And he was not really a gambler. So I don't know where I got the gene. So anyway, unfortunately, he took a turn while I was out there and he passed away Thursday night, the night before the Breeders' Cup. And I'm in San Diego and, what do? And you call home and they basically said, there's nothing you could do here. When you get home, you get home. So I went to the Breeders' Cup Friday, and I was kind of scanning the program, keeping in mind what he said. And sure enough, in the juvenile turf was a horse called Catholic Boy. So I said, well, my dad was a great Catholic, so 100 to win on Catholic Boy. He ran a good fourth, and I said, okay, well, we'll see how this goes. And after that, I couldn't do anything right. I played him a few times. He lost one day. Unbelievably, I was not alive to him in the last race at Belmont in the pick 4. He won, and I was just feeling like, something's wrong here. So I'm at Saratoga for the Travers, and of course he's in the Travers, and I kind of looked up and said, okay, something's got to give here, and I played him very well. And you remember the race? He ran them off their feet. He just, I think he won by 7 lengths, and it was pretty emotional for me. In addition to the emotion of joy cashing for the win, the exactor, and the try. So anyway, Sunday morning I woke up and I had this cockamamie idea that I needed to meet Catholic Boy, and I said that to my good friend Jeff Mora, who was on the chat already, and he was my traveling partner, and we set off on a search of all the barn areas, and I was using old press passes and finally found him, and Jonathan Thomas was very gracious, got a chance to meet him, did a story about it, and I've done a few stories since, and came home and decided that he was such a great horse and he needed his own hat and shirt. So I found Bob LaPenta online and had my designer at work design this really sharp logo here on Monday morning. And 2 weeks before the Breeders' Cup, Bob Mullins and I, another one of your fans, drove to Connecticut and spent a few hours with Bob LaPenta at his house and delivered the hats and T-shirts and had a shot in my father's memory. And that's the Catholic Boy story.
Well, and by the way, I want to thank Paul publicly, not for just coming on tonight, but he's one of the first people that reached out to me about the podcast, and I reached out to him because he told me about his background, and I said, I got to get in touch with this guy because horse racing, just like any other business, Paul, I'm sure you'd agree, is really not what you know, but who you know. And unfortunately, I do have to say, Paul and I are kindred spirits because amazingly, Paul mentioned his father passing away the Thursday of Breeders' Cup Week 2017 Del Mar. My father actually passed away on Breeders' Cup Day, Del Mar 2017. When he emailed me when Paul emailed me that story, I just shook my head. I'm like, we are brothers from another mother. I mean, it's just that coincidence. Obviously it's a very negative one, but just the fact that our fathers are both up in heaven, playing the races somewhere, smiling down on us is just a great thing. And boy, what a horse Catholic Boy was. And I know that you have a lot of interest, obviously, in horse racing and in public relations. I wanted to ask you this question, Paul, and this is the last question before we have my famous, very well-known 10 minutes to post segment, which I'll ask you 10 rapid-fire questions. But here's a little more of a long-winded question I'd like to ask you. I thought you'd be a perfect person to ask this question. What does the horse racing community need, in your opinion, to improve the public relations? Now, obviously, the simple answer is let's not have more drug violations by Bob Baffert. I mean, that's the obvious. But if you go deeper, what do you think, in general, the horse racing community and perhaps journalists like yourself, and I guess I would consider myself one of them now that I'm a blog writer, of course, for In the Money also, but what do we need to do to grow the sport and improve the public relations aspect right now?
Well, as far as the industry, Howard, one of the basic tenets of PR that, and I've said this to clients many, many times over the years, is the idea of one voice. And it seems like when things go wrong in horse racing, there's a lot of different voices. We had this major conflagration with Bob Baffert a couple of weeks ago, and the industry got kind of scooped on their own story, the racetrack or the racing commission, I guess, by Baffert. Baffert was smart. He got out in front of it, which you always want to do. But it just seems like whenever something comes up, horse racing is an every man or every woman for himself activity. And, there are times when, because the general public, they don't know what the hell's going on. They watch the Derby once a year. How many people do you have asked you because they know you're a horse racing guy? Hey, what's the story with this horse? The worst possible race for it to come on. But yet there's no unified statement from the industry. There's no noticeable crisis communications to try to at least control the narrative to some degree. The whole thing about the testing is absurd. I don't care what the reasons are. There's no way we should be sitting here 4 weeks later and not have that second sample. So, it really, the short answer, Howard, is that it has to get out of its own way, the industry. But I do believe that until and unless there is a national office, i.e. baseball has the commissioner's office, basketball has the commissioner's office, until everyone's playing by the same rules to some degree and trying to be on the same page with the same message, it's going to be tough as far as selling our sport.
Paul, just let you know that I'm getting a little feedback with your sound. There's a little buzzing. I'm not sure if you did something. Maybe you're a little too close to the. Yeah, I think you're just a little bit too close to the screen. And also, if you want to move slightly to your right, to your right, just a little more center, that'd be fantastic. To your right. Yep, there we go. Perfect. I think you were a little bit too close to the screen when you.
Yeah, I turned the volume.
There you go.
I'm always too loud.
No, I'm not sure. No, it's still buzzing. That's okay. We'll go ahead and continue on. I'm not sure. Getting a little bit of. It was fine at the beginning, but there's a little bit of. We'll go ahead and continue because we're live. So we'll see if you can maybe make a minor adjustment with your volume or something. I'm not sure. But anyway, yeah. Listen, we need there needs to be a horse racing commissioner. There's a lot of things that need to happen. For example, what's going on right now in New Jersey and Monmouth. I mean, you're hearing different voices from all over the place. I don't even want to go into that. I don't want to go into the weeds right now with that because we could talk about that, and crop rules forever. But I mean, there's just a lot of issues right now. And you're right, there is not one voice. And I think you make an excellent point. I think that's a big problem that really needs to be addressed. So, Paul, we're going to do, before we handicap here, we're going to do our one of my favorite things I like to do with my guests, and it is called a segment that we call 10 minutes to post. 10 minutes to post. Let me take this off the screen there. So, Paul, these are going to be 10 rapid-fire questions. So you can answer these pretty quickly. Again, Paul does not know what questions these are going to be. They're mainly horse racing questions, and then we'll get on to handicapping, by the way, which is going to be a fantastic late pick 5 at Churchill on Saturday. And for those of you waiting for Santa Anita, because originally I did put out we were going to handicap both. Santa Anita's, I love Santa Anita racing, but their stake races are very small fields on Saturday, like 4 and 5 horse fields. I just have no interest on going over stake races with such small fields. So we're going to be handicapping the late pick 5 at Churchill. It's all stakes on Saturday. It's big fields, and that's what we're going to be doing with Paul. But Paul, 10 minutes to post, rapid fire. Are you ready? Here we go. First question. How or when did you fall in love with horse racing? Sounds even worse, Paul. I'm not sure. We might need. I'm going to switch over to my iPad seamlessly. Okay. You know what, Paul? I'm going to remove you for a second, and then we're going to bring you back in so you can fix that. Sorry, folks. So we'll get Paul situated with his sound, and we'll talk about. We'll talk about his love of horse racing. Again, we're live, folks. Technical difficulties can happen. I see Paul. I think Paul's ready to come back on here. Let's see if the sound's any better. Paul, we're going to bring you on here. Paul, you want to try it now?
Any better?
Yeah, that is better.
Okay.
Yep, go ahead, Paul. Much better.
I fell in love with racing, Howard. I went to the dog track for the first time as a 16-year-old kid. I had $30 in my pocket. I broke exactly even, and I came out of there saying, this is how people who take drugs must feel, because I was on the biggest high of my life, and that just kind of morphed into horse racing. I covered my first horse race at Suffolk Downs in August of 1985, digging ditches with the ill-fated Chris Antley aboard.
Oh, wow. Best day at the track or the OTB? I think I might know the answer to this question. If it involves a video that I have, Paul, it was too hard for me to keep switching back and forth between
Yeah,
the forms. So if you want to talk about that day, but you don't certainly have to, uh,
yeah.
that you
Well, it
and I
was.
don't think a few other people listening know also.
Yeah, we go to Mohegan Sun every year that we don't go to the Breeders' Cup. Jim Mazer of Progressive Handicapping runs a function, and we were fortunate enough, a group of 5 or 6 of us put together a ticket the year of Arrogate, which is 2016, I believe. We put together a ticket that a lot of people had a part of. We had a small part of it, our group, and we were one of 10 winning tickets worldwide that year in the Saturday Breeders' Cup Pick Six. There was a $600,000 carryover, even with the Beholder Songbird. You could narrow it down to those two in the distaff. There was a $600,000 carryover. So Dr. Jeff and I, who's on the call on this live stream, kind of convinced Jim that we needed to take a crack at the Pick Six and put together a large ticket that probably about 30 people had various percents of, and it went well. We were alive to Chrome and Arrogate, so we were probably going to hit it. But Arrogate was paying more than twice as much, so we were pretty excited when Arrogate went by.
Man, I mean, he shared the video from the from the casino there. Unbelievable, unbelievable story. I mean, just to be able to hit that is an incredible accomplishment, but to hit it for that much, it had to be just absolutely amazing. Your favorite track other than Saratoga?
Well, I would say Suffolk Downs, my home track, but of course we're on the live racing has ended a few years ago due to the corrupt politics of Massachusetts. So I would have to say beautiful Belmont Park, where I will be a week from tomorrow.
Oh, so you're going to be there? Fantastic. That's wow. You heard me prep. I mean, what an unbelievable day. Well, you got to listen Wednesday night with me and Nick Tamro because hopefully we'll get you some. Not that you need the help, but hopefully we'll get some winners for you there a week from Saturday. It's going to be amazing for sure. Uh, one
Well,
article you
Howard,
wrote.
all I know is.
I'm sorry. Okay, one article you wrote
Say,
that
Howard,
you
you
either
had
regret.
Yep.
Sorry, that you regret or you wish you could have changed or done better, perhaps.
Oh boy. Howard, I'm one of those people that every time I submit something, I'm now petrified of when it's coming out, for the mistake. Every one of them, I think you wish you could have done better. But, I would say I wrote some stuff I would not necessarily in racing, but as a young sports editor, I probably wrote some opinion pieces that, kind of dealt with high school kids that maybe I went a little hard on scholastic athletes, but as far as done better, you always think you can do better, as I'm sure you can relate now that you're doing this every day.
Well, yeah, someone who writes a blog 4 days a week, and I'm also my own blog, of course, for this podcast. Definitely always looking to improve what you do. The sports team you dislike the most?
Oh, this is interesting. People are going to think I'm going to say the Yankees because I'm from Boston, but I've never really got too caught up in that. I would probably say, well, currently I would have to say the Los Angeles Lakers. Any team LeBron James is playing for.
Oh,
So currently it would be the Los
wow!
Angeles Lakers.
Throwing shame at the king. Oh my goodness. Well, listen, uh, people
Yeah.
go either way with LeBron. I mean, I'm a Chicagoan, so obviously, to me, the whole debate on who's the best player ever is not even a debate to me. Although I would say LeBron is a pretty darn close
Right.
1A, but
Right.
obviously, there's things going on off the court that some people agree or disagree with LeBron about. So I understand the sentiment there. He was not always the most likable, especially earlier in his career. Uh, your favorite now, I guess you're gonna say Catholic boy, but let's take Catholic boy out of the equation. Do you have a favorite horse other than Catholic boy, and why?
Yeah. Yes, my favorite horse, Catholic Boy, is the most meaningful horse for me because of the story. But my favorite horse of all time is Curlin. And I just
Mm.
kind of took a liking to him. I thought he probably was the best in the Derby. He ran a good third. He ran a great Preakness. the Belmont, he did get beat by the Philly. It was one of those circumstances. I don't want to sound like the California Chrome owner, but, 3 races in 5 weeks, the Philly off the long rest. And Rags to Riches was a great Philly. But he went on to great things. We were fortunate enough to be at Monmouth when he won the Breeders' Cup Classic at 4-1, by the way, I'd like to say it.
And also, by the way, the absolute worst weather in the history of Breeders' Cup Classic or Breeders' Cup races. The weather was absolutely awful that entire weekend.
Yeah.
Such a shame. But that was a great crop of 3-year-olds too, by the way. He didn't beat a bunch of tomato cans. That crop of 3-year-olds was outstanding that year. The most interesting interview or person that you've covered?
Trying to think of the racing side of this, because I've had a chance to talk to a lot of people.
It doesn't have to be horse racing, Paul. It could be anyone.
Well, I think, I've done stories over the years on Mike Eruzione, and for me, that USA, that USA is the sports highlight of all time. I was a 16-year-old kid, I think, or whatever, 17-year-old kid, and so Mike is certainly more than interesting, but. Again, I've had a chance to do some pro sports stuff, and like anything else, there's some people that are more interesting than others. But I'd say Mike Eruzione would be up there.
Do you believe in miracles? One of the biggest misnomers and mistakes that people make in sports trivia, thinking that when they beat the Russians, that was the gold medal game. That was not the gold medal game. That game, I believe, was on a Saturday night. And I think they beat, was it Finland? Or Sweden. I think it was Finland or Sweden, actually, in the gold medal game the next day. And it was like 11, in Chicago time, it was like noon on Sunday. It was a pretty quick turnaround, if I recall. I'm sure someone will tell me I'm wrong on the comments, but that was not the gold medal game against the Russians. A lot of people think it is. The younger generation, Paul, not us.
Yeah,
not us old guys.
The Russia game was on a Friday, Howard, actually.
It was a Friday, I'm
sorry.
Friday
afternoon, and people can't believe this in this day of instant technology. The game was not on live TV in the United States. It was on tape delay. And they did play Finland on Sunday, and were losing, as you recall, after the first period, prompting Herb Brooks to say to his team, if you lose this game, you will take it to your effing grave.
Things worked out pretty well for that team. The bucket list track or race day event you'd like to attend anywhere in the world, a particular track or a day at the track?
Yeah, I think I have a 1 and 1A here. I think Dubai would be 1 and Ascot would be 1A.
Yeah, I've asked this question to Matt Bernier and Michelle Yu. I agree with Matt Bernier. He said Melbourne Cup. That would probably be for me 1.
That would be my 1B.
Or 1A would be Ascot. I mean, Meydan would be unbelievable, but to me, Ascot and Melbourne Cup would be above Meydan, just because, first of all, you can't bet at Meydan, so that would be a big negative for me. But that's also a great day as well. The best part about being in the horse racing business, if you consider yourself in the horse racing business.
Well, I do, Howard, and it's unquestionably the people. I kind of walked in off the street to the Saratoga Special Guys 2 years ago and said, this is my background, and if you ever need any help, and, they've been great. And I've had the opportunity, I can relate because I've covered the Stanley Cup, I've covered the World Series. To text a guy like Mike Smith, who you've never talked to before, and say, geez, Mike, I'm working on a story on X. Any chance you could give me a few minutes, and to have the phone ring 5 minutes later. And that scene has repeated itself with Gary Stevens, with Jerry Bailey, and guys at the absolute top of their profession. And if you relate that to other sports and the access and all that, it's just not even a comparison. And then you get down to, I have a real soft spot for the backstretch people, the people that really are the lifeblood of the industry. So top to bottom, it's the people. And of course, my fellow degenerates, the horse players, who I also have a soft spot for.
You don't happen to know any of them that are listening right now, do you, by chance, or watching?
I think there's an eye doctor in Florida who falls into
Oh
that
boy, here we go.
category.
Name not to be mentioned. Here come the shots all the way from Florida. Um, about how many Belmont steaks have you been to, and do you have a favorite memory of do you have a favorite Belmont steak memory?
Yeah, I've been to, I'd say, 8 to 10, maybe not 10, at least 8, but not more than 10. And yeah, the American Pharaoh, despite having it hard to root for the owners, the American Pharaoh story that day, as far as my live sporting event history, is the highlight of all the. And as I said, I've been fortunate. I've seen the Stanley Cup presented.
Wow.
I've been to the Super Bowl. Been to the World Series. I was there when the ball went through Bill Buckner's legs. That was not a highlight for me as a Boston fan, but the in-person sports highlight for me. When he turned for home with that lead, Belmont Park, which, as you know, is a ginormous facility. It's a cliche, but it really was shaking, and it was something I'll never forget.
I mean, just watching, I just get chills thinking about it, watching on TV. I'll just say two quick things based on what you said. First of all, being a big Chicago Cubs fan, Billy Buckner was one of my favorite players of all time. And I think it's great, by the way, that Boston eventually sort of invited him back into their home, and he was, he was very hesitant to do it, but he ended up coming back to Fenway, and they had a day for him, and etc. But that was obviously an incredible story. My personal favorite in person was, ooh, I'm going to be wrong on the year. I think 1993. It was the Chicago Bulls Portland Trail Blazers Game 6 when the Bulls won the championship. I think it's 93. They came back. They were down like 15 to start the fourth quarter. Came all the way back. That's when Michael Jordan jumped on the scores table after the game and like waved his hands in the air. Standing room only. I paid $30. That's how $30 for a standing room only ticket at the old Chicago Stadium for the NBA Finals. You'll never see those prices anymore. But that was my personal favorite moment. Last question for Paul here, and then we're going to get into our handicapping. How can the horse racing industry do a better job to attract female fans? I talked about this and attending the races, etc. I talked about this a little bit with Michelle. I'm sure you've run into many wonderful trainers and owners and female racing fans. Do you have any opinion on how we can attract not just female fans, Paul, but the younger generation too, the Gen Zs and the millennials to continue to grow the game so when old guys like us are not around anymore, we'll continue to see this sport thrive?
Well, I really wish that female jockeys have done great, but I just really wish there were more of them. It just seems, again, there are many good ones. I had a chance to do an in-depth story with Sophie Doyle a few years ago, one of the nicest people I've ever talked to.
Yeah.
She that one day at Arlington showed Chad Brown's daughter around the girls' female jockeys room there. Of course, Julie Crone all the way back to '93. But you see the little girls going up asking for autographs to these female jockeys, and I just really wish there were more of them because I think that the way to get them in is to get them young, And as far as the young crowd, I think you got to do it on their terms. You look at that crowd at Churchill last Saturday night, Howard. I'm sure you were watching and playing like I was. You do something different like that. You at night, some kind of silly music after the races. And, Belmont Park, by the way, eventually I think is going to have night racing. Once the dust settles with the arena, part of
Really?
the long range plan there, I think, is maybe to have some night racing. So
Wow.
I think, the young people, you got to kind of do it on their terms. It's unfortunate we need the time between races that we do because, they go to a casino and they can play a hand of blackjack in 30 seconds, but it is what it is. We can't run a horse race every 2 minutes, But
Right.
I think those are a few ideas, just thinking of different things. And, any exposure we can give the females that are in the game, because there are some very, very good ones, not only on the jockey side, but the trainer side, the owner side. I've had a chance to talk to Maggie Moss, who's a great owner. So I think the more we can publicize those people, the better chance we have of getting the younger females involved.
Yeah, and coincidentally, Canterbury Park, of course, the track that I cover for In the Money, does a great job with their. They have family festival days. They've got dog race, like they have, they have fun corgi races. They do a lot of really fantastic things. If anyone's interested in how to run a racetrack for families and get more of the community involved, I highly recommend you look into Canterbury Park because they, before the pandemic, they had 7,000 plus in attendance every night. We're talking about weekday nights. They would 7,000 plus. They one of the best attendances on a regular basis of any track in the country. So they really do a great job with that. All right, so Paul, we're going to go ahead now and jump into the pick five sequence. So the pick five that we're going to be discussing, folks, is of course on Saturday. It's at Churchill. It starts at 3:50 Eastern Standard Time. And uh, again, it's all stakes pick five. Two of them are graded, and I think it's a very interesting card and sequence. And as we talk about the races, folks, you're going to see my top three picks and Paul's top three picks also on the bottom of the screen. And then at the end of the sequence, I will show you my caveman ticket. If you're interested in my ABC picks, that's one of the reasons why you need to get the race day blog. So again, if you're just listening and tuning right now, please email me hkravitzhorse@gmail.com. Tell me you're interested in receiving the race day blog, and that's where you're going to see not only my ABC picks, but a lot of other price plays earlier in the card, and also tracks throughout the country. So there's our picks there. Let me go ahead and put up the. Let me get to my past performances, Paul. Um, Paul, why don't you go ahead and start? This is a mile and eighth. The first, excuse me, sorry, let me jump to. I had the wrong. There we go. This is a mile and a 16th. It starts in race 7, mile 16th at the Shawnee. It's for 4-year-old and up, fillies and mares. They're going for 150K on the dirt. Paul, where'd you go here?
Well, I landed on the favorite, Howard, which you never want to start the sequence. But, I played on Boutant last time, trying to beat She Dares the Devil. And I thought she ran her eyeballs out. She Dares the Devil right now is quite possibly one of the better older female horses in training. So I went back and I looked at that replay, and I just had some real knocks on the other logical contenders. La Renoletta, the Askerson horse. There's just really no explaining that last race. He ran great his first start in this country, and he was off a long layoff last time. But the horses that she beat rather in the first Oaklawn race, those horses are 3 for 43 lifetime since then. So that looks like a pretty weak field. Paris Lights, who I saw last year win the CCA Oaks at Saratoga, didn't really have an excuse last time. Has had a few decent workouts then, but I just didn't like her last race. Istan Council, who I thought was the next most logical, I think is much more of a board threat than a win threat. So you go through all that, and I think the most likely winner in the sequence is on Bhutan.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. If those of you that listen to the show, or if you're new to the show, I really liked En Voutante last time, La Trienne. I thought she had a big chance to beat She Dares the Devil. And She Dares the Devil, pretty much just walked on the lead. En Voutante just couldn't quite get out soon enough and just really couldn't go by. But She Dares the Devil got away with a ridiculous, 24 and 47 and 4. I also think, Paul, that this horse is better on the outside. I talked about this last time. I think she's going to be better just stalking the pace. I think she's going to be very tough to beat. I think there is an argument, Paul, and I don't know if you agree with this or not from a handicapping standpoint, because this question has come up before in my show. If you have a heavy favorite in the first leg, do you just skip that and play the pick four instead? I think it's a very interesting discussion. And anyone who's listening tonight, if you think that you should just skip this race and play the pick four, I completely understand it. I don't think it's a bad idea. The reason why I would play the pick five though is because I'm not sure Emutan's gonna be 4 to 5. We'll just have to see. The morning line on Paris Lights there is absolutely ridiculous. I think this horse has been completely overrated. She's always bet. I've never been that impressed with her. I think the two Renoletta, which you mentioned, Paul, is a bit interesting. I'm not sure She was off there quite a while. She was off for over a year. I'm not sure what issues she had, but I put this horse in second for two reasons. Number one, the combination of Asmussen and Santana, and number two, there's no crazy drop. There's no long layoff again. That work on May 17th was excellent. There, 59 breezing. If the two can somehow get back to her previous races, I think she's really the only logical horse that can upset Envoûtant. I'm using Envoûtant the 7 as a lone A and the 2 as my lone B in this race. I think if the 7 loses, then that's really going to hurt me in terms of the pick 5. Sometimes you just have to take what you're given, and I think in this case, you just take the 7 for the most part and you move on. Speaking of moving on, let's go ahead and move on to, and we are going to show, we
One
might
thing
show
I,
some
Howard,
replays. Again, Churchill's a little bit tricky, ladies
Howard,
and gentlemen.
one.
Oh, go ahead, Paul. Did you say something, Paul?
I was just going to say one thing to consider with La Rinoletta. Yeah, one thing to consider with La Rinoletta is, she has been stabled at Oaklawn, and Oaklawn was pretty much shut down for a couple of weeks in February because of weather. Now, she didn't run until April, but, there's a chance that she did miss a few weeks of training. A lot of horses at Oaklawn got slow starts. The horses that were stabled there early in their meet, the horses that had shipped in seemed to be doing better. So if you're looking for a reason to better, that's a possibility.
Well, actually, that's a really good point. Now, it did. Actually, I'm just looking. By looking, I could go back and look at all the works. We can go back and look at the works here. I think that was in like February to March. I think they had some issues. Actually, it was January. Yeah. Actually, it was at Fairground. So January 28th. She doesn't have a work from January 28th to February 24th. I think it was like early mid-February is when they had all their major issues there with the weather at Oaklawn. So that's actually a very good point. That could be
They
the
did.
reason, obviously, why she didn't quite fire first time out. Let's go ahead to race 8. I'm going to go ahead first. Paul, I thought this was a very, very difficult race. This is on turf. Now, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, Churchill is supposed to get some very. I was watching the weather earlier. They have a major cold front coming through with some very heavy rain. I'm not sure if it's going to come through tonight or tomorrow. Looked like morning. Everything is supposed to clear out by tomorrow night or early Saturday. But you definitely have to handicap the turf to be wet. I'm guessing they're going to be on the turf. I would not be surprised, Paul, if they do have two races, race 2 and race 5 are on the turf, and one of them is a stake race. It would not be surprised. It wouldn't surprise me if race 2, which is just an allowance race, is taken off the turf, and just the stake races are on the turf. We'll have to see what happens. But again, if you're handicapping folks for Saturday, I would definitely handicap for turf that is going to be wet, possibly yielding, depending on how much rain they get tonight and tomorrow, because they're definitely getting rain. But if you got a mile and eighth there, this is for 3-year-old restricted fillies on the turf. It's for 150K. This is the grade 3 regret. I thought this was a very, very difficult race. I'm 4 deep in my A's. I'm not a big proponent of hitting the all button in general, but if you were to hit an all button in one of these races in this sequence, I think this one might be the one. My top choice is the number 1 Oyster Box for Graham Motion. I think she's coming out of some very good races at Tampa and the Florida Oaks against Domain Expertise. And then at the Aqueduct race against Bubbles on Ice and Fluffy Socks, Fluffy Socks also ran very well on Thanksgiving in Del Mar. I think actually she won the race, if I recall. Oyster Box has been closing into very slow paces. I think she's got a very nice closing kick. I must say I'm not a huge fan of Chris Landeros on the turf, but I have a lot of faith in Graham Motion. This horse is by Tappet. I have a Dynaformer mare Starformer who is very talented. I don't think distance is going to be an issue at all. In fact, I think Oyster Box is going to appreciate the extra distance. I'm also going to use the 4, who's probably going to be the favorite, Spanish Love Affair for Mark Casse. This horse is probably going to have the lead and could easily wire the field. My only concern with Spanish Love Affair is I'm not sure about the distance and I'm not sure about the wet. We'll have to see. I don't think longer is better, but on paper, she might be lone speed. When she won in the grade three at Gulfstream, it was a very slow pace and she got an absolute perfect trip. I think Spanish Love Affair is going to be an underlay in this race. I think she's going to be overbet, but because of the pace situation, she's very logical. I'm also using the 5 as an A, Barista, who ran second to Gift List in the Edgewood. That was the race the day on Kentucky Oaks Day where shockingly Gift List just blew by the Aunt Pearl, the big favorite. But Barista ran very well, albeit with a very good trip, but got an 81 buyer. I see no reason why Barista can't improve. And I'll also mention my other A, Gam's Mission, the 7, who also raced against Flown, the 8, and Money for Rowe, who is the, I think, 2 in this race. Yeah. So the 7 beat the 2 and the 8. We're not going to watch the replay, but Gam's Mission was between horses and closed very nicely with an excellent ride by Adam Bishiza. Again, I like the breeding here by Noble Mission, who's out of Galileo. So if it's wet, I think that breeding will help. The 7 is my other A. This is an absolute wide open race, and I didn't switch the picks on the screen. So, Paul, as I do that, go ahead up with your top picks in the regret.
Well, Howard, you mentioned Spanish Love Affair. I just think the pace flow, the race flow, really favors this filly in this race. Uh, she was in a merry-go-round race last time. A classic Louis Saez. Saez put Jouster on the lead and just kind of walked them all the way around. Spanish Love Affair did get in a little trouble at the start, but I don't think that's because of the race. I think it was more the pace flow. Tyler Gaffleone looks like he had his choice here. He rode Flown last time as well, and he's ridden this horse in the past. Looks like he picked this horse. I think the extra distance is a plus, to be honest with you, Howard. I think horses that are going to get on what I believe to be a comfortable lead, I actually think are more dangerous with the extra distance. So I think the 5-2 is about right. I just think pace-wise, I didn't really see that much that's going to prevent Tyler from kind of having this his own way.
If I could just jump in, just not to be contrarian, but that's why we have
Drew's horse on the outside, kind of
just to show you, there's a delay that Paul just let you know there's a little bit of a delay. Just let you know, folks. So if you hear us talking over each other, we apologize. But just to show the PPs, this is the this is the mother of the 4. You can see that she's only really gone 6.5 in a mile, and Caraconti was really more of a miler. So again, I'm not saying the 4 can't win the race. I'm just simply pointing out that based on the breeding, I think the 4 might prefer shorter. But everything you said is absolutely true. And also, if I could mention that last race, folks, Spanish Love Affair got a horrible start. Horrible start in that race. Again, it was against Barista coming out of that same. Yeah. Actually, no, I'm sorry. That was a different race. I apologize. But anyway, Spanish Love Affair got a horrible start to that race. Go ahead, Paul. You wanted to talk about the outside horse.
I think she chased a slow pace last time as well. She was second. She was in that Jouster race that I referred to. I think Giroux will have her in pretty good position. I used your oyster box. Same reasons. It's a turf stakes, Graham motion. If the horse has any type of pace, it'll be fine. The Barista, the horse you mentioned, I have down as a board horse. That was a really odd race. Plum Ali was a heavy favorite in that race. Didn't run ridiculous fractions and absolutely dropped anchor in the last 16th of a mile. So
that was just an odd. Pearl, correct? Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. In the Barista race, wasn't it Plum Ali last time?
No, it was Aunt Pearl, but I know what you mean.
Aunt Pearl.
Yeah. Aunt Pearl actually bled. She was planning going. They were planning on taking her to Ascot.
It was Aunt Pearl, yes.
She bled in the race, and as far as I know, she's not going to Ascot. I don't believe.
Yeah, so it's just an odd race. So I think Barista is a definite player here as well.
Yeah, I looked at the 9 real carefully. If you look at the Saranya, I mean, because it's Brad Cox and Drew, she's going to take a ton of money. But I don't really know what she's done to really deserve any hype. Now, I will say, I play and watch fairgrounds very closely in the winter. Those were very slow paces he was trying to close into. So if you're discouraged by the buyer figures. Obviously, the buyer figures are going to be affected a little bit by the pace of the race, and they were absolutely crawling on the March 6th and February 5th race. That last race, I think they just tried to. I agree. They tried to put her up close. That obviously didn't work. But Paul, if we both think the 4 is going to have the lone lead, then you're talking about the 9 basically having to outclose the entire field. So I'm a little bit against the 9 personally, although I have her as a B, but I can certainly understand why people wouldn't want to use her just based on connections alone. Any other thoughts you have in this race, Paul?
No, I thought that was it. I just wanted to mention Barista, and again, I think Oyster Box could get a good trip. I'm with you on Landeros. Dr. Jeff Moore, who's on this call, is also not a Landeros fan because he had him disqualified at 40-1 at Saratoga 2 summers ago. So he's not a Landeros fan either. But it is Graham Motion and a turf stakes race, so you kind of have to always look a second time at his horses.
For sure. If you folks have any comments, opinions on anything, Tom, I'm sorry that I didn't get up the picks up there sooner. Like I said, folks, I'm doing like 4 or 5 things. I do not have a hired producer that does all this behind the scenes, and I work with one monitor. Hopefully, I'll maybe get a second monitor soon. That will help. But Tom, thanks for letting me know I didn't put the picks up. But again, if you guys have any questions, concerns about any of these horses, please make sure you comment. Let's go ahead to race 9. I'll put the picks up first, which will be probably what I should do, and then I'll go ahead and switch to race 9. Paul, I'll let you go ahead first as I switch to the 9th race, which is the other grade 3 on the card, the Matt Winn.
Yeah, so I think this is a difficult race in the regard of you're really supposed to bet against, and I picked Helium, but you're really supposed to bet against Helium and Obisos here. They're coming out of the Derby. That's what the average Joe is going to see and play them. And I hate playing horses that were 38-1 last time that are going to be 5-2 this time. Now, having said that, I think, again, Helium is not going to be around 6th in this race. I think he should have a chance to go. Although, having said that, it's Leperoux is not my favorite on a horse like this. I picked him, Howard. I went back after I sent you the picks. I'm going to take a long look at the 1, Ready to Pounce, who is coming off a maiden. He's taking a huge step up in class, but he did run an 86 buyer last time, which means he probably wouldn't have to improve much more than about 8 points. He drew away from a 6-5 Juddmonte Farms homebred last time, so that'll be a pretty good maiden race. That realm
there's
of
the
law.
PPs of the horse he beat, by the way, if you want to talk about that at all.
The Juddmontes breed them well. Yeah, I just watched it, and the 6-5 comes up on him on the turn, and if everyone thinks he's going right by, and this horse just blew away. He gets the rail. He should save ground. Brian Hernandez rides as well as anyone at Churchill. Neil Pessin off a maiden win going long is 0 for 10, so that's not a great stat. But
Paul, let's go ahead and watch it. He's the 1 horse here, Paul. If you want to talk about it a little bit.
My gut says you're supposed to beat the 2 Derby horses.
If you want to talk about it, Paul, he's the 1 here.
Yeah, so he gets a good trip. Don't get me wrong. He's going to come inside and he's going to take the lead. But you'll see shortly after he gets the lead, here come those Juddmonte Silks at the quarter pole, and you're figuring, this 6-5 shot is going to go right by. Pardon me, this is the quarter pole, and you'll just watch in the stretch. I don't know if it was a rail track that day. I'd have to go back, but he just he just puts this Juddmonte horse away. Now, the Juddmonte horse hasn't run yet, so we don't know how good he is. But, I'm assuming a Juddmonte homebred is going to be decent. So I just think if you're looking to mix it up with a price, that's going to be my price play in the race.
And what's your impressions of the other horse likely to take money, the Brad Cox for Flandreau Folsom? What was your opinion of that horse?
Say that again, Howard. I missed you on the delay. I'm sorry.
No problem. What was your opinion of the Juddmonte horse Folsom for Brad Cox and Drew?
I picked him second. I think he ran very well last time. You can read the comment. You know, he was wide throughout, and he just had an extended drive. He did regress a little on the Buyers, but the Buyer he 4 times on turf, and the fifth time they tried to run him on turf, and it got rained off, and he won. So they figured, oh, maybe this dirt thing isn't such a bad idea. So it's an intermischief. Of course, the intermischiefs are running all over the country very well. So I actually picked him second. I think he's a big player here.
Some guy named Jeff Moore. I don't know. I heard he knows a few things about horse racing, but a little bit of shaky character apparently as well. You might have heard of him. I just kidding, Jeff. He makes an excellent point. He said Inside Speed has been winning at Churchill. Um, to me, I would definitely upgrade the one if it's wet, because this horse has wet breeding. I'll go back to the breeding of the one, who I do think is an interesting horse in this race. Let me just go ahead back to the past performances. Uh, Ready to Pounce, you can see out of More Than Ready, ran on the turf, and it says good. That Keeneland dirt definitely looked like it had some moisture. I don't want to mislead anyone, and neither does Paul. I don't know if it was speed favoring that day, or sorry, if it was inside bias on that day. He looked real good. Before I talk about my top picks, I will say I'm always dubious, Paul. I don't know if you feel this way, of big numbers in an off the turf race. I don't find the fields usually that
Yes.
good. I understand that he beat a Juddmonte, but it was an off the turf race, which means you got a lot of horses that, were really meant for turf. It was also a small field. I wasn't really that impressed with the field. We can go back and look. Emphasize, you can see really is a low 70s, high 60s buy. There's not much there. Charger, who came in fourth. Again, not much there. I don't think he beat really anything other than maybe the realm of law. However, I will say that he was visually impressive. It'll be interesting to see how Ready to Pounce is bet. I have Ready to Pounce just for you folks out there so you know. And again, you'll see this in the race day blog. I have Ready to Pounce Paul as a seahorse, as an extreme backup. I could not. I got to be honest, folks. I went back and forth in this race a million times, and Paul and I did not talk about these races in particular. I don't like to do that with my guests because I like to have fresh opinions and be a little bit surprised. I completely 100% agree with Paul in the fact that I try to find a fresh face in these races. You've got horses coming off the Derby trail. They were obviously pointing to the Kentucky Derby without being said. That doesn't mean they can't win, but my top choice actually is going to be the 5 Folsom for Brad Cox and Florent Giroux. I want to show the replay of the Oaklawn Stakes race. And it was a buyer. He's obviously going to have to step up. But what I like a lot about this horse is you're going to see that he was in between horses a lot, not overly comfortable. Folsom is the 4. We're going to let this run through. Again, he's going to have to step up his game, but I see no reason why he can't step up his game. You see already he was in slightly tight, and he took back a little bit. I'm just going to go ahead and fast forward. I really like the fact that, again, he's in the Juddmonte Silks. You see right there, he couldn't get to the rail, and now he's in between horses a little bit. I'm not saying he was in an uncomfortable spot, but to me, he was never really in a comfortable spot. You can see the 1 is holding his position there, and now he's in between horses again. There's no check. There's no steady. People might look at this and say, Howard, what are you talking about? He got a perfect trip. I don't think this is a perfect trip. Again, when you have horses surrounding you, that is not a comfortable trip. You see they won 48 and 1 there to the half. Again, he's in between. He's in hand, doing it very easily. Outside the 3, you're going to see the 1 here rush up inside of the 3 and try to make an early move, which actually might have helped Folsom. But you see he's still sitting very kindly. And now in the 7, now the real running is going to start here. Now he's in the 3 path, and he hasn't really quite asked yet. And now he actually shakes the reins and gets after him. And now he's, it's a pretty slow pace there. Now he's 3-4 wide, and he ends up outclosing the entire field. Did he blow by this field? No. Does he have to get faster? Yes. But I like the way he did it. You see he goes left hand here, and this is a pretty nice final quarter. I don't think distance is going to be any issue at all. I think this is an up and comer. Again, he's going to have to step up his game, but I like the 4 here. Excuse me, I like the 5 Folsom to beat the top 2 choices. At first, I had Helium on top. Helium is going to have the lead, it would appear. And anyone who has Helium on top, who, by the way, that's my second choice, I obviously understand. But, Paul, I've got a question for you. Do we really know how good Helium is? I thought the Tampa race, I know he was 4 or 5 wide. I don't know your opinions, Paul, of Helium in the Derby. I was completely against him. I thought that the Tampa Derby was extremely weak. He showed a lot more speed in the Kentucky Derby and actually had a great effect on the race because he ended up bothering, I think it was Midnight Bourbon, if I recall. What's your general opinion on the talent of Helium, Paul?
I think it's
Sorry,
in,
Paul. Go
I
ahead.
think it's in question, Howard. As I said, that's why I don't like I don't like the prospect of playing him at 5-2 after he was 38-1 last time. I just think he does have a chance to go to the lead, save ground. Again, Leparoux is not my favorite guy on a dirt route to be on the lead, but I think he has a potential to be overbet. I could tell you that much.
Yeah, I agree. And Obesos, anyone who has paid attention to my show knows how much I loved Obesos in the Derby. I thought he ran very well, ran a very solid fifth where the pace didn't even really develop and he's a closer. He is like the Moto obvious horse because he's got buyers in the mid 90s. Paul, this is exactly the kind of horse that I would like to bet against in this race. There's not a lot of speed in this race. He looks fastest on paper. I think 2-1 is a pipe dream. I think Obesos is 7-5, Paul, in this race. Obviously, Obesos can win. I'm using Obesos as a B, as in boy. I would highly recommend for all of you that like betting caveman tickets. To me, it makes no sense from a value standpoint to use the 2, 3, and 5 in this race, Paul. I don't know if you agree with that point from a ticket construction standpoint, but I would highly recommend that you either just take a shot with one of them or only use 2 of them. Going 3 deep in this kind of race when they're all going to be less than 3-1, in my opinion, is not a good idea. Paul, do you have an opinion on ticket construction with these 3 horses?
Yes, I do. My general opinion is you shouldn't be playing caveman tickets. And
I agree.
this race is the classic. This is the classic example because I want to use this ready to pounce, and I'm going to use them. But there's no way that I should construct a ticket that gives him the exact same chance of winning as my top 2 selections, which happen to be the 2 and the 5. I would not use Obesos on a caveman ticket under any circumstances. I think one of the reasons people liked him in the Derby, everyone said how the distance won't be a problem. He can run all day. He's going to close. And, he's now running a mile and a 16th off a mile and a quarter. I think Greg Foley is a very good trainer, but I think this was the race that came up. It's their home track. They can walk him over. I think the price is going to be poor in this horse. He can win. He could win by 5, but I would not use him on a caveman, and I probably won't use him in my pick 5s at all. If he wins, I'm probably going to lose.
Wow. Wow. Paul Halloran taking it. Listen, you have to take stands in this game. I think throwing Obesos off your ticket, listen, I do not think that's a bad idea. And again, folks, we're not saying that Obesos can't win the race, but you got to take some chances. You got to take a stand somewhere. I think, Paul, your comments are very valid and excellent. Let's go on to the next race. Again, I think this is a very tough race. Let me go ahead and switch my picks or our picks over as well. Again, if you have any comments, questions, anything you'd like to ask us, please let us know. We've got a great amount of people watching tonight. Thank you very much for joining the show. As I go ahead and switch the picks there, you can see them on the bottom of the screen. I'll go ahead and go first. You can see we both land on the same horse. Paul, I feel about this is 6 furlong Aristides. It is ungraded. It is 150K as well. This is a sprint, 6 furlongs on the dirt for older horses. I feel about this race, Paul, a little bit like the Regret, the second leg. I think you either need to take a stand or you need to really, really spread here because I think other than the 5, who I agree with you is the best horse in this race, you could go many, many different ways here. So you have to take you have to make a decision. Umpire Gold is 7-2 morning line. I have a feeling this horse is going to be lower than that, Paul. He has the best numbers. He's been facing Whitmore and CZ Rocket. He's been facing extremely good horses. He's very underrated. He's only 4 years old. The jockey David Cabrera is a very good jockey that a lot of people, don't know as well because he runs mainly in the mid-south and etc. I have only one concern, and it's his work pattern. I mean, if you take a look at his work pattern, it's crazy. But I went back, and this horse always works sporadically and always works slow. So if you're concerned about the work pattern of Empire of Gold, I would not. This is just what this trainer does with this horse. He seems to be fastest. I think he's going to sit a nice stalking trip. Empire of Gold is my top choice. Now, my second choice, and I'm chuckling because a lot of people are like, oh boy, Howard, he's here. There's Tap to Win. Listen, folks, I have to say that I'm a little bit married to Tap to Win. I'm also, there's some horses that you just like a lot and you have to stay with. If people that follow the show, I love Tap to Win in the Grade 1 Churchill Down Stakes on on Kentucky Derby Day. I also love Swiss Skydiver as a horse, and I hope she runs next weekend. I think she is. Tap to Win ran awful. Listen, I am not going to make any excuses for Tap to Win last time. However, I will say one thing. He was caught up in a very fast pace and was on the inside part of the track, and I don't think the inside part of the track was the place you want to be necessarily on I did it again, on Derby Day. But listen, it was basically one of his worst races he's run. I do not like the 3-1 at all. I think that's a ridiculous morning line. I think you're going to get 5-6-1 on Tap It to Win because everyone sees, that last race. I think he's going to be much better stalking, number one. And I think he's going to be much better on the outside. If you're afraid to play Tap It to Win because the last race, I understand. But Paul, this is exactly the situation when I want to keep betting this horse because I think I'm going to get a better price because of his last race. He's got figs that fit. I see no reason why Tap to Win cannot win this race. I'm just tossing out that last race. He's also been working well. And my third choice, although I will say a very soft third choice, is the 9, Sir Alfred James, who appears to be progressing. He can be on the lead. He can sit off the lead. I like the outside post. I like that CJ Hernandez is on this horse, and I like the morning line. But really, other than Empire of Gold and Tap It to Win, Paul, I could use almost every other horse in this race. I think this is completely wide open as well. Paul, I see you also go with Empire of Gold on top. Why don't you talk about your top 3 picks, please?
Yeah, I thought Empire and Gold, it sounds Captain Obvious, but that CZ Rocket, Whitmore, those 2 races are unbelievable key races for not only them coming out of it, but others. But and I thought the price on him might be okay. I think he's the most likely winner. I, like you, Howard, like Tap It to Win as a racehorse. I loved him in the Allen Jerkins last year. He got picked up by Echo Town. I think he's a bet against in this race. I have a funny feeling, and I know it's only a furlong. I think you're going to say, well, Paul, he's 3 for 3 at 6 furlongs. His 6 furlong wins are a maiden special weight and 2 Florida bred races. I think he is a better 7 furlong horse. That's just my opinion. I think he did run awful last time, as you pointed out. He is 0 for 3 at Churchill Downs. I just think there are reasons to bet against him. Now if he's 6-1, like you're dreaming he will be, uh, I might change my mind. But I like Empire of Gold. I thought Bango, the 3-horse, ran a very big race last time. He was in the 10. He stalked. He took the lead. He led inside the 16th pole. He was in the same race as Tap It to Win. And, the end of that race, I have in my notes, Howard, it looked like a turf race. There were 5 horses across the track. Flagstaff somehow miraculously got through in between horses. It was just chaos the last 16th of that race. But I thought Bango did run well. Again, 23-1 last time. He's probably more like 7-2 or 4-1 today. But I think he's a big player in this race.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't know what to do with Bango. I use Bango right now as a seahorse. I know he can win. He's just too inconsistent for me, and I think that morning line is just horrendous for a horse. He loves Churchill though, and he did everything you said is absolutely correct. I'm not sure that he can run another big race again. And the fact of the matter is, it wasn't that fast a race. It came back he only got a 90 buyer. It was a very weak edition of the Churchill Downs race. And I know what everyone's going to say. Well, how can you like Tap It to Win then when Bango absolutely destroyed Tap It to Win? I just think this is a complete different circumstance on Saturday. But you also have you have the 8 as your third choice, Moho Man.
Yeah, I'm going to use on the board if I do get into tries in this race, which I don't know if I will, but I'm going to use Dallas Stewart's horse, the 6 and the 8, to try to get into the try, maybe into the exacta. If the race should fall apart, I think Dallas's horse will be coming. He's a rooter, but he's cutting back, and I think again, Mojo Man, it was strictly coming out of that CZ Rocket race, even though he ran an unthreatening 5th. He's 4.5 lengths off. There's no one other than Empire of Gold. There's no one resembling CZ Rocket or Whitmore in this race. That's for sure.
Yeah, I've got Moho Man as a B. Like I said, I have, and again, we'll talk about in the race day blog that some of you've signed up for. I have 5 B horses in this race. I have Empire of Gold as a lone A. Paul, I think he sort of stands out a little bit. And then you could pretty much throw a blanket over a lot of them. I've got 5 Bs, including Moho Man. And I looked at Long Range Toddy a lot. This horse has absolutely route breeding. He's actually never even sprinted before. I found this to be a very interesting placement. I don't know if Dallas Stewart is just trying to find a spot, Paul, and they're just completely experimenting, or if they actually have seen something in the morning. He's been working really well over this strip. You have to believe there's going to be a fast pace. I would not be shocked at all. Listen, Dallas Stewart has done it before, right, Paul? I would not be shocked at all if Long Range Toddy wins this race. But I know one thing. This horse should be coming like an absolute train down the middle of the track on the outside to get either second or third. I would absolutely use this horse in trifectas, and I would definitely use this horse in your pick 5s as well. I think Long Range Toddy, again, he's going to need a setup, is very interesting because it's just, to me, a bit of an unusual spot. Is there any other horse here, Paul, you'd like to mention in the Aristides before we move on to the last race?
No, the only thing I'd say, Howard, about Long Range Toddy, if you believe in company lines, I'm going to give you the names of the horses who have won the races that he's been in, starting most recently. By My Standards, Mystic Guide, Owendale, Endorsed, Tom's Day Tot, Owendale, Mr. Money, Owendale, Maximum Security, and Omaha Beach. So now he hasn't necessarily been that close, although he was only a length off Endorsed and Bankit, who are pretty decent horses. And again, as you said, Dallas Stewart showing up in 15-1 and winning a stakes race. Stop me if you haven't seen this movie before.
Listen, I don't doubt this guy. I just think I saw his name. I couldn't believe. I was sort of surprised. I'm like, I did a double take, Paul, to be honest with you. And then I went back and looked. When you go back to the beginning of his career, I'll just go ahead and show all of his lines here on the screen. I mean, he went 5.5, and then after his 5.5 furlong first time out. I mean, the shortest race was 7. I mean, so you think he's more of a long-winded type. Again, I'm gonna try to find out a little more information from Dal Stewart and read some clippings about this race if they're out there. But I think this horse could be very interesting. Let's go. By the way, another horse I wanted to mention, Paul. Did you take a look at the 4 Edgemont Road? This horse had major back numbers last year and just hasn't fired this year. I have this horse as a B in case he can get back to his races from last year. I will agree the Esmond is good this year, but he lost to Zendon, who unfortunately passed away, but went to Saudi Arabia and completely freaked. And then he was in a turf race that you can complete toss out. Do you give the 4 any chance at all to win this race?
I would say yes, Howard. I agree with you. Things would have to fall his way, but I really don't. I'm really puzzled by the turf start last time. I don't know if they were just looking to get a race in him or what. And Eddie Keneally certainly knows a lot more what he's doing than me. But I was just a little puzzled by that. But the horse does show a lot of speed on dirt. And with Ricardo Santana up, if he were to go wire to wire, would I be shocked? No. I would say he's probably going to be a C on my tickets, but I think he's the type of horse, if you're spreading out, you use defensively.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I have him as a B right now, just because, like I said, to me, other than Empire of Gold and maybe Tap to Win, you know, I don't have the 1 and 2 anywhere. By the way, I don't think the 1 and 2 can win the race. I'd probably just put one of those horses in the winner's circle, but I think 3 through 10 could absolutely win. Let's go ahead to the last race of the sequence. Then I'll show you my caveman ticket, and we'll take any other questions and wrap up the show. Race 11 is also on turf. This is for males 4 and up. They're going a mile and 16th on the turf. It's an overnight stakes, 110,000. Paul, I'll let you go first as I go ahead and switch to my picks. Go ahead, Paul. You can go first.
I landed on Wesley Ward's horse here, which 2 months ago you wouldn't be looking at Wesley Ward in a turf route, but he seems to be winning everything these days. I think you're going to get a price on this horse. The morning line is 6-1. He is coming off a layoff, which is a solid move. Ward is 25% this type of layoff. Ward is good off of a win. He's very consistent with his buyers. This is the spot that I do want a guy like Leparoux in. I think the horse has got tactical speed, doesn't need to be on the lead, but I think he's going to be fairly close to the lead. And there's a couple of other horses in here that are logical that I really didn't like, so I landed on him.
Yeah, I think Ramsey Solution, I have him as a B. Wesley Ward was fantastic at Keeneland with his horses. I think he's better at Keeneland off the layoff than he is at Churchill. He obviously can win this race. This horse is, I'm not as worried about the layoff really in general with Wesley Ward horses. If it's very wet, that would be a slight concern to me. I don't know if, but again, the horse is out of by Real Solution out of a Dynaform mare, so you would think that the horse could handle a wetter turf course, and Leparoux is probably very live on this horse. You have who I think is a standout in this race as your second choice, the number 8 set piece for that great combination of Cox and Giroux.
Yeah, I just put my headphones away, Howard. I hope you can still hear me. I think the extra 16th of a mile is a definite plus for this horse, who ran very well last time on Derby, I guess they call it, Kentucky Derby Thursday. 2-1 morning line, he's going to be the favorite. He certainly can win. Maybe a little pace dependent. He does want to come from behind. Although you look at Gray's Fable just outside of him, certainly has some speed. I think my horse, Ramsey Solutions, got some speed. Pioneer Spirit, so probably will get some pace thrown into. And I picked him second, but he's a solid A teamer for me.
And for third, you have the 3-horse, that'd be Parlor for Michael Maker, also coming off a layoff.
Yeah, and actually that's one of the horses I talked about. I think he's going to be bet. Maker, who is tremendous, as we all know, is He's only stakes races on turf with this type of layoff. He's only 1 for 8. He's 16% in general with this type of layoff, so he's just a little lower. I think the horse is going to be overbet. I use him third, thinking that he's got a chance to hit the board, but I don't really love him as a win candidate here.
Okay, I think I think he can win. I'm not a big fan of 7-year-olds off the layoff. But I mean, look at this horse has been facing: Spooky Channel, Factor This, War of Will, Flavius, Ivar. I mean, this is very classy 7-year-old. And again, makers like Ward, they could certainly win off the layoff. And Santana, by the way, who I know a lot of people think is more of a dirt jockey, he can win on turf, and he has ridden for Maker on the turf more than you think. It's an angle that I've noticed over the last year or two that Maker has actually used Santana more than people think. So don't be dissuaded, by Santana on this horse. I've got Parlor as a B. My general opinion in this race, Paul, is if I'm alive to set piece in the pick 5, I'll be very happy. I'm not going to say that set piece towers over this field, but there are a lot of things I like about set piece. First of all, I think there is enough speed in the race. Let me just go ahead and sorry for the scrolling here, but Parlor I think will show some speed, but he's really not speed. I think Ramsey Solution could absolutely show some speed. Pioneer Spirit is going. I don't think he has a chance, but he pretty much has to go. And then Gray's Fable is definitely going to be going. So I think there is enough speed, even if it's not crazy speed. You see this last race is a perfect example in the opening verse. Look at the fractions. They went 23-4, 49-1, and set piece was still able to close and run them down. In fact, if you look at the fractions here, if you look at the incremental pace, you see that final quarter, a set piece ran in 23-4, which was a much faster quarter than anyone in that race, and it didn't even get the setup. So I don't think a slower pace will be that much of an issue. I trust Giroux. This horse is also ran very well on yielding turf. I think he's getting better and better. Set piece to me is my lone A in this race. I would use Gray's Fable, and I'd also use Ramsey's Solution and Parlor as backups, and maybe I'd also use some others as extreme backups. But to me, the race really goes through set piece, and if I'm only alive to set piece, frankly, I would be very happy. Let me go ahead and show everyone I'm going to go ahead and take this off, the PPs off the screen there. I'm going to show everyone my caveman ticket. Now, listen, both of us, Paul and I, would prefer ABC tickets. The ABC ticket that I will have will be on my race day blog. Again, if you have not signed up for the race day blog, please email me at hkravitzhorse@gmail.com. You'll see not only my ABC ticket, but a lot of other details. They have a lot of other stake races, folks, earlier on the card. And also I'm going to have some races handicap from Belmont and maybe Santa Anita as well. Here's my caveman ticket. And Paul, feel free to completely agree, disagree. We also a lot of people that are commenting here. Folks, I see your comments. I'm going to put a bunch of comments up in just a minute. And Paul, feel free to say this is horrible or you love it. Here's my $108 caveman ticket. To me, Envoutante and Set Piece are by far the most likely winners of this entire sequence. So I would just take a stand. I would single Envoutante. I would hit the all button in the Regret because I think it's absolutely wide open. I know, there he is. He just said he wouldn't go 3 deep in the caveman. I would probably not do that. I'd probably go 2 deep, folks. I probably would not use 2, 3, and 5 in that third leg. So I realize I'm being hypocritical now, but I just want to put that ticket out there. I'd probably go 2 deep instead of 3 deep in the Matt Winn. Again, I'm very spread in the Aristides, Paul. I have everyone except the 1 and 2, and then I would just gun it and go for it with Set Piece. Other than the fact, Paul, that I know that we probably wouldn't go 3 deep in the third leg. Any general opinion on ticket construction for this caveman?
I don't think it's terrible, Howard.
Well, not terrible. I'll take not terrible from the one and only Paul Halloran.
I do think the Matt Winn is tough sledding because it's the type of race that, everyone who goes 3 deep is using those 3. And everyone who goes 2 deep is using 2 of those 3. And anyone who singles is using 1 of those 3. Maybe that's why I'm trying to convince myself that the 1 can win. But, in these multi-race sequences, we're looking at en route at 4 to 5. You are looking for separation at some point. Hey, look, those are the 3 most logical winners. Although, as I say, I'm not big on Obesos, but on your ticket, you're hoping for that 40 to 1 shot in the second leg, obviously, and a 20 to 1 shot in the fourth leg.
The shakeup, you know what? I completely agree with you. You're absolutely right. The shakeup, I should not have used. I think this is an excellent point, and I'm glad you said it, folks. Listen, feel free to criticize me or disagree. That's why we have great people and guests on the show, and the wonderful thing about horse racing. The shakeup, I agree with you. I should not be using the favorite. And let me just explain more detail what the shakeup means. I'm going to go and bring up my ticket again here. If I'm singling 2 horses that are going to be lower priced, then in this all right here, I probably should take the top 2 choices out, frankly. So if I were to reconstruct this, I'd probably take the 2 top horses out of the second leg. I would go 1 less deep in leg 3. I think Umpire Gold is 7 to 2 morning line. I probably wouldn't change the Aristides, but I think you bring up an excellent point of the shakeup, no doubt about it. Let me bring up some other comments, Paul, and I'll have you agree. Brian wants to go back to Spanish Love Affair. Absolutely got bumped. Says jockeys don't pick who they want. I'm not 100% sure about that, Brian. I don't like to play. Listen, agents make a lot of decisions. I hate playing jockey gymnastics, Paul, because we don't really know the stories behind everything. I do think jockeys have some say, especially if they've ridden both. I mean, Paul, you're a good person to ask this question. I mean, you've covered the game. You've obviously interviewed jockeys and trainers afterwards. Do you want to talk at all a little bit about the jockey gymnastics and how much, in your opinion, or maybe it's not even opinion, maybe it's fact, how much jockeys have in their decision of who they're riding?
I think Brian is generally right. I think the agent in most of the cases is making the decision, but my answer to that would be then the agent thinks that Spanish Love Affair has a better chance of winning, and that's why he put him on that horse. You talk to Ron Anderson, who's the agent for Rosario and Johnny Velasquez. He'll tell you, my guys don't make any of the decisions. I do. So I think Brian is right on target there. But as far as the gymnastics, I mean, just look what has gone on with the Derby Preakness Belmont. So Flavian Pratt rides Hot Rod Charlie in the Derby, and Hot Rod Charlie doesn't ride in the Preakness. Pardon me, Flavian Pratt, Umberto Rispoli got pulled off. Not Hot Rod Charlie, the other horse there, Rocky World. Rispoli gets pulled off Rocky World, correct? Pratt goes on him. Pratt wins the Preakness with Rombauer.
Right.
And now Pratt is off of off the Preakness winner, back on Hot Rod Charlie. And you got to think that either that's a deal that was ahead of time, or they think he has a better chance to win the Belmont, which I agree with them, by the way.
I want 2 comments. First of all, John Seiler's got enough of his own issues right now. I don't want to get into the weeds, but he had a drug violation. If you don't know about it, you can read the story. It's not getting as much play because it's not Baffert and it wasn't the Derby, but he had a drug violation recently. Paul, I gotta say, I was a little bit surprised that Pratt's going back to Hot Rod Charlie. I like Hot Rod Charlie, by the way, as a horse. I will say I don't love him in the Belmont. I'm not sure a mile and a half is what Hot Rod Charlie wants, but he was my top choice based in the Derby, so I love the horse. I was a little bit surprised when you win the Preakness with 100+ buyer and then you don't stay on Rombauer. I guess that's a feather in the cap of Hot Rod Charlie, but were you surprised by that decision when you heard about it?
I was mildly surprised, but I think there could have been a deal going into the Derby, saying, look, if we don't win the Derby, we're not running in the Preakness, but we're going to come back in the Belmont. So it's not unusual for them to give 2 calls. And I believe, my opinion in the Belmont, is that Hot Rod Charlie is a more likely winner than Rumbauer. So I could be wrong, just like Pratt's agent.
Folks, if you're listening to the show tonight, please comment on your opinion on Pratt going to Hot Rod Charlie instead of staying on Rumbauer. And of course, if you're watching this as a replay, we have hundreds and hundreds of people. We had over 1,000 people watch our Preakness show with Matt Bernier. Please comment down below the video player any opinions you have on this Pick 5 sequence, any of the topics, any of the horses we talked about, any of the topics that Paul mentioned through our questions, or your opinions on Pratt leaving Rombauer and going back to Hot Rod Charlie. Again, maybe it wasn't his decision. It could have been the agent. We understand all that, but I was still a little bit surprised by that. I'm just looking at other comments here on the chat. Jeff just mentioned the Preakness is not the best route to win the Belmont. Absolutely true, Jeff. We could, since we have you on the show here, and we're going to wrap it up here in a minute because I don't want to go too much longer than 90 minutes. Paul, your first impression, of course, there should be, in the Belmont should be anywhere between, it looks like 10 to 12 horses. Based on what you've been reading, your knowledge of these horses through the Triple Crown season, do you have any opinions, or even better, strong opinions right now about the Belmont next week?
I definitely don't have a strong opinion. I was kind of looking to play Plexus horse that won the Peter Pan Promise Keeper, I think it was, but he's running 3, and apparently he's not one of them. I find myself thinking like I was going into the Derby, which I don't like, is the Essential Quality. I kind of get to him by process of elimination, and that didn't work out that well in the Derby. So I still got some work to. I mean, they've worked this Rebel Romance. I always fall for these horses coming from Dubai. Doc will tell you I'm a sucker for these horses. You know, the one that ran in the Derby like a hobby horse, I had him. But this Rebel Romance, I think that's it, right? He's worked like 3 times in 8 days, which is very unorthodox. So, I use that other France go to Rayina horse because he was coming out of Dubai as well. So,
by the way, Paul,
apparently
Joe apparently has the winner. Joe, if you want to, I'm assuming you mean Essential Quality, Joe. I don't know who you love so much, but Joe, if you want to put in your chat who you're referring to, you said they're all running for second. I'm guessing Joe loves Essential Quality. I have no idea. We'll let Joe answer for himself. I think Essential Quality can win, but I don't think he lays over the field at all. I feel the same way about Essential Quality, Paul, in the Belmont here as I did in the Derby. I like him a little more here than I did in the Derby because Brad Cox has said all along this horse wants, can handle the 1.5 miles and wants that distance. So I actually like Essential Quality a little more in the Belmont than I did in the Derby, but I would never bet Essential Quality next week at, 2-1 on the win end. Never, ever, ever would I do that. It'll be interesting to see. So, Joe, if you want to comment in. There's a question from Tom. Tom, thanks very much for joining the show. I'll let you answer this, Paul, but Tom said he's not a big multi-race player, but he wants to know how you'd rate this pick 5 in terms of payoffs. Do you think this could be chalky, Paul, at Churchill, or can you see some major upsets and a huge payout?
I don't think it's going to be ridiculously chalky. I think I'm hoping it's kind of middle of the road. You get one separation, and they have pretty good field sizes. That's a huge factor with the multi-race plays that you have to look at. You made the good point, Howard. Santa Anita, there are 30 horses in the late pick 5 at Santa Anita on Saturday, which is absurd. There are 45 in this sequence. So, an average of 9 a race. There's no 14 horse turf sprint that is going to potentially knock everything sideways. But I think there's a reasonable chance to get a couple of 5 or 6 to 1s in there. And the key is you got to beat favorites. If the favorite wins, the majority of people are playing small tickets and they're using favorites. So you need to be able to hit these multi-race sequence if the favorites aren't going to win. And you got to be willing to not hit it if one of them beats you. So if an old Bezos beats me, I'm fine. You don't want to have a 40-1 shot somewhere and then not have a favorite in another leg. But there's a reason they call it gambling.
Tom, I'll tell you what I very may well do, and I won't know this, Tom, until 3:50 Eastern Standard Time. If Envoûtant in the first race is, I'm just going to throw out a number. If she's 2-5, I will not play the pick 5 with her. What I will do is I will take 2 or 3 horses, like the 2 and maybe the 3. I'll go like 2 deep, play a very small pick 5 without Envoûtant, and then I will play a large pick 4. Because again, if Envoûtant's 2-5, there's no reason to play the pick 5 in my opinion with that horse. I'd rather try to beat her and play a smaller pick 5 ticket and then play a big pick 4. I think Envoûtant's the most likely winner of the sequence, Tom. I think Set Piece in the last race is the second most likely winner. You mentioned, Tom said that he thinks there's 3 likely winners. I don't think Empire Gold is a likely winner at all. I just think he's best on paper in the Aristides. This is actually Jim. Paul used his wife's name there. Jim says since 3 of the legs of the pick 5 look chalky, would it make more sense to try the 20-cent mandatory pick 6? Jim, I'm going to admit something I probably should. I was not aware that Saturday is a mandatory payout in the pick 6 at Churchill. If it's a mandatory payout, I definitely going to take a look at it. I have not looked at the race before the pick 5. But again, I'm probably more willing to play a big pick 4 than the mandatory pick 6. I'd have to look at the race before that. Paul, do you like to play the mandatory rainbow pick 6s when you see them in any track, or you just stay away from those?
No, I play the mandatory. That's about all I play.
Yeah.
I hate this jackpot wager. I think it's great that tracks are getting away from it. Naira did in Keeneland, I believe. I've been calling for the $1 traditional pick 6 for about 20 years, and someone finally listened to me. As far as Saturday, that is a 7-horse field in the 6th race. You got South Bend coming off a big win at Keeneland. You have Night Ops, who is the morning line favorite for Cox. You got Tom Drury saw Sprawl. So, and remember the 20-cent play brings a lot more, a lot more combinations onto people's tickets.
It's older horses, 2 turns on the dirt, correct, Paul?
Named for Blame, a horse who once won a race at Churchill Downs.
I wish I could pull up my phone and show you. I met Blame. Blame tried to take a bite out of me, by the way. Blame was not the nicest guy, but I'll tell you what, he was awesome that day because I had him in the pick 4. I love Zenyatta, but I had Blame in the pick 4. I needed him that day, so I was very happy. Check out Blame at Claiborne. Just a shout out to Claiborne Farms, who, by the way, Catholic Boy is at Claiborne. Is that correct?
We're going. October, my good friend Dr. Jeff Mora, who's on the chat, and a few other of our group will be going to Keeneland. And I will be visiting, first and foremost, my friend Curlin at Salapa. And I will be visiting Catholic Boy at Claiborne.
Claiborne is just fan. Anytime you folks have a chance to go to a farm, I highly recommend it. Last things we end the show, Jim, real quick, with the pick 6 and you look at the double. Absolutely, Jim. Yes. You absolutely should do that, Jim. You could, if you look at the probable payouts in the double, you can see what kind of favorite Envoûtant's going to be. I'm guessing, I think she could be 2-5. I really do. Again, if you're thinking, Howard, you're going to base your decision off of 2-5 versus even money, yes, you could be talking about $100 difference there, folks. So I am going to see what the price is on Envoûtant, and then I might play the pick 6 or the pick 4, depending on what we have there. Listen, Paul Halloran, has been an absolute pleasure to have you on this show tonight. I thought you did an excellent job handicapping. If you're home, give a little round of applause for Paul doing a great job. Good luck to everyone. Any closing comments, Paul, before you let you go, and then I'll go ahead and close out the show on my own about Saturday or just anything in general you'd like to mention? Any shout-outs? Anything at all?
No, other than Howard, you had Matt Bernier 2 weeks ago, Michelle Yu last week, and Nick Tamaro next week. So I am clearly what they call in college football the sandwich game, the game you have to just get by. So, you have a big drop off this week, but I'm sure you'll pick it back up with Nick Tamaro next week. But thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, Paul, I appreciate the sentiments. I'm not sure about the drop off. We really enjoyed having you show. Paul Halloran, thank you very much, Paul. Really appreciate it. So that was Paul Halloran, folks. Again, I am going to have other viewers on the show. I mean, Paul's sort of a combo deal, right? So he just happened to see this live stream a few months ago and enjoyed it. And he's also in the horse racing business. But if you are, just a fan of the show, you enjoy watching and following the podcast, I'm going to have more contests. I'm going to have more guests, viewers on the show. But again, if you join me late, next Wednesday, we're going Wednesday next week. Nick Tamaro is going to be with me to handicap all of the races on Belmont Stakes Day. You are not going to want to miss that live stream next Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm expecting to have a huge amount of people watching and live on the chat with questions. So again, mark your calendar down. We're going next Wednesday on Belmont Week, 8 p.m. Eastern, and my guest will be the one and only Nick Tamaro, nationally known handicapper, morning line maker. He's done it all, works for In the Money as well as I do. And then finally, again, please follow me on inthemoneypodcast.com and follow my blog for Canterbury Park and my selections there. And also email me at hkravitzhorse@gmail.com if you'd like to be a part of my race day blog and also find out more about some big changes occurring next week. This has been episode 43 of the HHH Racing Podcast. I've been your host, Howard Kravitz. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Good luck this weekend and have a great night. Goodbye.